If your main goal is hypertrophy, then you've probably heard a lot of people say that if you get stronger, then you'll get bigger. But there's not as much overlap between strength and hypertrophy as most people think. My name's Naveed, and I used to be very skinny. Like, I used to weigh under 90 pounds. And so when I first started working out, my main goal was hypertrophy, and it kind of always has been. Although I started to fall into just adding more weight to the bar, trying to get stronger, and just getting the weight from point A to point B without really thinking about my real goals. I think it's very important to know your real goals because then that'll guide you to know what you're actually going to do in the gym to get those results. Because if your main goal is hypertrophy, which this video is for if your main goal is hypertrophy, then if you start training for strength, it's like, it doesn't really make sense. You get stronger as a result of hypertrophy, not the other way around. You don't hypertrophy because you got stronger. The base is hypertrophy, and that's what leads to getting stronger. So to get hypertrophy, you just need to stimulate the muscle like through your actual workout and by going to failure and all that. And then as a result, over time, you will be stronger. Also, I just want to say again, this video is for if your main goal is hypertrophy. If your main goal is strength, then yeah, obviously you should train for strength. But like, if your main goal is hypertrophy, then this is a video for you. If you think about it, strength is basically just how much weight you can lift. That's really all it is. It's just the amount of weight on the bar that you get from point A to point B. At least like in a practical sense, like in the gym, that's what strength is. But strength in terms of your muscles, that's going to be more the muscle size and neurological efficiency. So just like how efficient you are at sending the signal from your brain to the muscle. That's like for the actual muscles, the strength of the muscles. But you got to think about the whole like lift as a whole in the gym, what you're doing. And the externals of that lift can also affect how much weight you can lift. For example, you could shorten the lever arm in certain scenarios or orient your rib cage like on bench. If you arch your back a lot, kind of limits the range of motion a little bit, maybe widen your grip. You're just like orienting your rib cage. You can lift more weight, but that might not necessarily be the strength of the muscles themselves. So yeah, maybe a stronger muscle is also a bigger muscle, but that's just for the muscles. Like if we're talking about the actual lifts, like I said, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have stronger muscle if you can lift more weight. Like bench is an easy example because you can lift a lot more weight if you arch a lot and retract your shoulder blades and really get everything tight, but that doesn't mean your pecs are actually stronger and bigger. Orientation equals force production. So bench, like any sort of press, is kind of an easy example. When you're just flaring your ribs a lot, retracting your shoulder blades, you're orienting your whole rib cage, and that's going to allow you to lift more. But that's not necessarily a good thing for hypertrophy or aesthetics, because this can limit tension on the actual muscles you want to train, like your pecs in that example. And it can also compress your rib cage a lot more, and that can lead to a whole lot of problems, like pains in certain areas, and also just like worse aesthetics. I used to have this pain on kind of the left side of my upper back, like in between my shoulder blades, and I'm still trying to like fix it a bit now, but I used to arch like crazy and orient just everything, especially on something like incline dumbbell press. I used to just arch like crazy, and I would often have to drop the weight and improve my form. And when I started to arch less, I started to feel my chest way more, and it would actually get sore. I just want to say there's for sure exceptions. There are definitely people who can train for strength and they have amazing aesthetics, and you can still get strong and have good aesthetics at the same time. But if you look at someone like most powerlifters, their physiques aren't usually that great. But either way, like if you know your main goal is hypertrophy, then just do what gets you the hypertrophy. Like, why would you even, like, if strength got you hypertrophy, then that's what you do, but it's not necessarily. What gets you hypertrophy is just training with good form, stimulating the muscles, and going to failure. So why not just do that if your main goal is hypertrophy? I still lift heavy on certain things, like deadlifts, I go pretty heavy, but I think it kind of affects certain muscles and movements a little bit more. Like, for example, chest is kind of a big one. If you're always arching a lot and really just in this like compressed position, always pressing like that, then your chest development is probably going to be pretty like bad. Shoulders is another big one. If you're doing lateral raises and you're kind of just like flaring your ribs as you're raising the weight up, trust me, if you stop doing that, you'll feel your shoulders way more, and that's one of the causes of the pain I had on my back, because I was always just like doing that. It will always hurt when I did lateral raises. But then when I started just keep your ribs down and just focus on the movement of your arm, then you'll feel your shoulders way more and it'll just be way better. Like, you want to think about kind of protracting your shoulders and not letting your back arch or kind of like throw everything upward like that. Also, back can be affected quite a bit, like, the traps, the lats, because they all have like very different functions, kind of, and it can be kind of like intricate. But when it comes to deadlifting heavy, I mean, for the most part, hamstrings, glutes, lower back, you're gonna get all of those, even if you're going heavy. Because the thing with the deadlift is like good form. Like, if we're talking about a bench, right? If we want to get the most pec development, we're probably not gonna want to arch a lot and go super wide grip. But when it comes to a deadlift, like, those things on a bench will help you lift more. But what helps you lift more on a deadlift, like that form you use, is also kind of like the same form you'd use for hypertrophy. Especially for like spinal erectors, those will get developed very good from heavy deadlifts. But like, if you squat really heavy, then you might not be getting as much quads. Whenever I go a bit lighter and do sets of like 10 or 12, or just in general like go lighter and improve my form, I feel my quads way more and they actually get sore. Some things you might want to try is having a slightly narrower stance with your toes pointed more forward, and also just trying to squat more upright in general. I mean, those are like quite basic things you already heard, but also your foot contacts can be very important and make a big difference. You want to focus on putting your weight on like the inside of your heel, like the inner heel, right? And also the ball of your foot that's like also on the inside, which is the first metatarsal head. Kind of like shifting your weight to the inside of your feet and like flattening your arch as you go down. Like, think about really driving like internal rotation of your legs. Like, don't really think about driving your knees out. Like, a lot of people say that is like really good form or whatever, to like push your knees out a lot and don't let them come in, but then you're not really getting as much quads. Like, that's kind of one example of a powerlifting form versus more of a bodybuilder form, because you wouldn't really do that if you're trying to lift the most weight you possibly could. Because when you use that form, you're putting more tension on the muscles, but that's what you want for bodybuilding. But when you're using less of the muscles and more of just connective tissue and stuff, you can lift more weight. So see how it's a little bit contradicting. And you might have to go a bit lighter to really do this form, but then you'll actually get more tension on the muscle even though you're going lighter. More of that weight is going onto the actual muscle you want to train. And like, it's not necessarily lighter or like higher reps. You could still use the same weight, you'd probably just get less reps. The big difference here is that you're putting more tension on the muscles, so if you have been lifting heavy with kind of worse form, you're probably going to have to lighten the weight a bit. Like, I can squat 225 for 5, and I feel no quads at all. And then when I drop down to just 185 for like 10 or 12, I feel way more quads. Like, if I usually do 225 for 5 with kind of more like a powerlifting form, if I did that with the form I'm trying to use more, I might only get like 2 reps or 1 even. Like, I would love to think that just getting stronger will get you all the hypertrophy, because that's like fun, it's fun to lift heavy. Like, for deadlift, I do that, right? But it's just like, there's a bit more of a separation than most people think. And I'm not talking about some like gimmicky, get more out of less weight, like Dr. Mike Curl thing. Like, I'm talking about actually putting more tension onto the muscle, which I guess that kind of is like get more out of less weight, but I don't know, I just don't like that, the sound of that. Get more out of less weight. How about get more out of more weight? Most people are getting less out of more weight, and people are recommending to get more out of less weight. Why not just get more out of more weight? Like, for lateral raises, I could lateral raise probably 25s for a solid set of 15 if I really just like, just arch my back, flare everything, and to most people that would be like, oh, that's good form, you're not swinging or anything, and you're going, up to 90 degrees or whatever. But then I would just feel it all in my back would probably just start hurting, and I would feel no side delts. But then if I drop down to 15s and use really good form, I might only get 15 to 20 reps as well. But the difference is I'm actually putting all the tension on my side delts instead of just orienting my ribcage. And I do think the mind-muscle connection is fairly important, at least a little more than most people say. Because like, when you're feeling the muscle working, you kind of know it is working. And I think a lot of people who discredit it, that's because they don't feel anything when they're doing it, and they can't think that maybe what they're doing is not actually targeting the muscle to its fullest extent. And obviously it's not like everything, but I think it's still valuable for sure. I'm not talking about having like someone touch your arm while you do your curls or whatever. That is kind of, then you're kind of just cheating it. Like you have to feel it on your own, because when you actually do something that makes the mind muscle connection better, like in terms of changing your technique, then you probably are actually targeting the muscle more. Like sometimes it's kind of hard to notice. Maybe you just want to go a bit heavier, and by most standards it's, you know, good form, but you have to remember like what your actual goals are. And yeah, it's like it's not easy to tell. Sometimes on lateral raises, like I'll just want to go up to the 20s because I can, but it's just hard to notice that little extra bit of arch I'm using. And what I do notice though is my side delts don't feel as fatigued afterward. I mean, a lot of people who lift very heavy, and maybe some like power lifters, they've all had like at least some small like nagging pain or something like that. And like if that's your sport, then yeah, that's what you should do. But if you're not a power lifter and your main goal is hypertrophy, then why do something completely different because you think it might get you more hypertrophy? Just do what gets you hypertrophy, whatever it may be. And also, you know, lifting heavy is fun, so I wouldn't completely say like, oh, just only lift like really light, perfect form. Like, yeah, still lift heavy. I still lift heavy, and I think deadlifts is a great one because, I mean, maybe I'm just not smart enough to see like what compensations I'm using and how it's like fucking me up, but at least just like kind of realize the effects of what you're doing and maybe just have a bit more balance. By the way, if you resonate with what I'm saying and you want personal help with your fitness for free from me, then you can just email me. We can talk about your training if you just want like a new perspective or discuss things. Yeah, that's it for this video. Have a good one.